Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar, DORA in Action, the Digital Operations Resilience Act. We've heard a lot of great things from our customers about this important regulation that has now been in force, I believe, for a little over a month. And so we've been talking to a lot of customers, especially in Europe, but not limited just to the EU, that have to comply with this and have questions about it. So we wanted to dig in a little bit deeper into some of those specific areas and talk through them. You're welcome at any time to put your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll answer them as we get them. So we really appreciate you joining. You're also going to see a few links to some different assets that can help you navigate this regulation. So with that, my name is Mike Bailey, and I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Keyfactor. Admir, why don't you give yourself an introduction?
Sure. Thank you, Mikey. My name is Admir Abdurahmanovic. I'm a Senior Vice President for Strategy at Keyfactor.
All right, so let's get into DORA, and let's just dive right in and talk about what is DORA. And so really, this is an EU regulation among many regulations that we're seeing, NIS2 and others, that's about enhancing cybersecurity and improving operational resilience of information and communications technology in the financial sector. Okay, so they do that through a lot of different tools. There's incident reporting rules, there's governance and oversight, information sharing, if there are issues, and things related to PKI, obviously, and certificate lifecycle management, which is why we're here. I think a few things I want to call out about this regulation. One that's really interesting that stood out to me is don't forget your information communication technology providers. So the people that maybe do your antivirus, or they do other digital infrastructure at your banks, at your institutions that manage these databases, that manage cloud providers. Those are actually all provided, all included in the regulation. So it's good to get a check from them that they understand this regulation and they are complying with it, as well as all the financial entities that operate in the EU. That's the other important point. It's not just financial entities that are located in the EU. It's anybody that does business in the EU. And it applies to any financial entity. You don't have to be a bank, or you don't have to be anything standard, but anything involved in a financial entity or financial management whatsoever are involved in the regulation. Admir, anything you want to add to that in terms of what you've seen with DORA so far?
Yeah, sure, Michael. Well, if you start from the intent of the regulator is to up the game, not only with the DORA, but a bunch of other regulations and coming in future, such as NIS2 or CRA. We want to up our game that we are more, as the word says, resilient. But then it also specifies a number of things that organizations needs to do. And to your point, there are different type of suppliers that an organization may have. Nonetheless, it's a responsibility of the organization to be able to self-inspect, if you like, to assess, are we managing our risks correctly or not? Therefore, Keyfactor is only one of the suppliers that can help organization towards that aim, and that's a moving target. That it's a process, just as security is a process, so is the resilience. On the other hand, being one of these suppliers, we consider that in terms of ICT technologies, the technologies that Keyfactor provides are, or the types of technologies that we provide, are foundational for the resilience. Absolutely foundational.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that foundation. And this is a question that we ask our customers to kind of understand where they're at and make sure they understand the implications of what we're doing and working with them with. And that is PKI is critical infrastructure. Because what we've seen continuously is that if that foundation is not solid, then things like zero trust and identities of your users and all your machines and physical access, everything gets impacted by it if it's not set up correctly. And there's been a few kind of additions, I would say, to PKI that a lot of people aren't aware of. One of the big things is obviously we're having a lot of Internet of Things devices being built and smart devices, and they're everywhere. Now they're in medical devices, they're in automobiles, they're, POC systems on the floor, and technology like cameras and operational technology for security. And one of the big things that we've kind of expanded into is IoT and OT manufacturers. How do you both design and then secure these devices at scale as you roll them out throughout their entire life cycle so that you can ensure the identity of that device is maintained? And that I think is really interesting. But in addition to that, maybe that's more of a niche thing if you're a manufacturer, but there's also software and code security and the security of your workloads. And that's been a big focus of a lot of our customers as additional regulations are coming out, and additional organizations, especially government organizations and larger enterprises, are asking, what does the security of your supply chain look like, your internal supply chain? What different libraries are you using? What components are you using? And so that has become a really big trend for us. And we're only seeing this accelerate as more types of devices are manufactured, and there's more and more applications that enterprises are deploying to their fields and their employees that need to be managed. Admir, I know you've seen a lot of really interesting deals kind of come through, and customers doing all sorts of interesting things with PKI. Anything you want to add to that?
Sure. A modern organization that would be, say, covered under DORA is, generally speaking, a good example of an organization that is applying ICT technologies in order to scale their business, first to support and then to scale their business, maybe also to interact with other parts of the ecosystem, other organizations, maybe also subjects to M&As, generally speaking, all these events in the life of an organization always have a number of PKI use cases. So when we are talking PKI as an infrastructure, we are talking about, in our surveys, anything from 6 to maybe more than a dozen use cases. Some of them are just for our authentication of our employees, but then another use case could be authentication of our, say, bank customers. Yet the third could be, as you were into, say, network infrastructure and different type of capabilities that we have in order to calculate all kind of business applications. So there are a whole lot of them that have to be covered, and almost every single one, if not every single one, actually needs to be resilient from the perspective of DORA, if we want to keep our resilience against incidents.
Yeah, let's zoom in on specifically some of the call-outs from the regulations related to PKI and certificate management. So the big things are maintaining a cryptographic key management policy throughout the lifecycle. This is something that we've seen customers struggle with. It's very hard to do manually. Sometimes things get there's PKI and CA sprawl, as we see from customers, where there's a lot of different rules and CAs kind of at play. Ensuring the prompt renewal of certificates in advance of their expiration. This is a huge thing that we hear from customers that have outages when certs expire on some of the underlying infrastructure. It happens really often, and we see it in the news when there's a big outage. Securing assets from an ICT risk assessment, which is something that is recommended that you do in DORA as part of the regulation with strong encryption. And the other thing that is impacting that, as we'll cover in a little bit, is quantum computing. Microsoft just came out with a brand new chip that was pretty revolutionary. And there are going to be advancements where in 10 years, the current algorithms will not be able to hold. And that may be as short as 5 years that we're seeing kind of different numbers from people in terms of the timeline. And then creating and registering a register, creating and maintaining a register for all certificates and certificate storing devices. This is a huge component of how we work with customers when they first start with us, is the discovery process. We look at the CAs, we look at all the different endpoints and networks and do those scans to understand what do you have that you may not know about in terms of certificates, and create one central repository. So let's talk about the first one, maintaining cryptographic key management throughout a lifecycle. So one of the big things that we are on about is the flexible PKI platform. This has been a really important differentiator for us and a really important strength for what our customers expect from us. And that is, we understand that not everything needs to be in the cloud. We have fantastic cloud offerings that are fully managed, but we also do a lot of on-premise and hybrid setups. In fact, they're extremely popular with our enterprise customers for managing those key life cycles, because not everybody can be on-premise. And we have a really good system for basically the entire life cycle of the cryptographic keys and managing that straight from our PKI and CLM. Admir, what kind of things have you seen with what happens with cryptographic key management with customers when we first start working with them?
Well, the good thing is usually our customers that are covered by DORA already, by nature of their business, a good chunk of them would be aware of the necessity of a proper, healthy key management. It has to do with the legacy of this sector from a symmetric key management. But then, as all these organizations have modernized their ICT infrastructure, they have introduced a bunch of services where PKI is underlying technology. Maybe their end customers do not see it, but it's built in, say, in a banking app, or it's built in a way how we interact with these entities. That being said, one of the importance of the key management is the fact that it is protecting, say, in the worst case, signing keys in situations where a bank might, I'm using bank, but like any organization, there are a bunch more organizations under DORA, may need to digitally sign a document, and losing such a key would be, frankly, a disaster. But it could be even a smaller thing, such as losing the key of your web server and not being able to serve your constituent customers, which then brings us to a situation where we cannot provide our services, which then immediately is an incident, and therefore we need to handle it from the perspective of incidents in the DORA. I would say when it comes to the key management, it is way, way better to have proper management and be a little bit on the conservative side than to expose yourself to any type of risks. Why? Because the price we pay is very high. In situations where keys are lost, maybe you need to repopulate all the credentials for all your customers or all of your employees. It could be a disaster.
Yeah, I think you're right. It has a cascading effect, and kind of on that point, going to the next one, because I think it's also very similar, is, we hear all the time, I mentioned earlier, about outages. And so one of the big things that's happening in the industry, there's been recommendations by Google, there's been recommendations by Apple and some of the other big players, and the CA Browser Forum, which is one of the organizations that influences the most, is going to be changing certificate life cycles, public certificate life cycles, from, I think, 398 days is the max at this point, down to 45. And we hear that from customers all the time that are worried about that, because at the end of the day, that is about 8 times more work then on renewing certificates than it is today. And no staff can manage that effectively if they're doing it manually. And this is why having this automation in place is absolutely necessary. A lot of organizations have some automation in place, and some are still doing it manually. But this is one of the big things that we help customers with, because we understand how much impact it can have to not have these things set up correctly. And what we do in terms of the actual workflows, which is actually one of the pieces of the command platform that we have, is you can set up different approval processes and steps and notifications, and even let teams know if, let's say, they're using a specific CA, if a new certificate comes through that maybe they aren't aware of, they're all notified of it. So it's a really good way to improve that visibility and to help other teammates or colleagues that need to be involved in PKI but may not have the expertise stay in the know, so that they're aware and they're involved in that process. And there's a lot of good role-based access control too, so they can only request certificates of a certain type and only do so much without an administrator present. But what we've seen at a lot of organizations is there's a bottleneck, and that is you have 1 or 2 people that manage certificates, and then they get all the requests, and they're either manual or through a Microsoft form, and they have to manage that. And so we help kind of improve that through our automated tool that we do. And there's obviously rapid key replacement in case of compromise, expiration, or failure that Admir talked about, that we do automatically, that really helps customers not have to worry about that part of the process. One of the big things that you're going to hear from the entire industry related to PKI and certificate lifecycle management is post-quantum cryptography. And one of the big things from DORA and the ICT risk assessment is, do you have the correct encryption on the assets? And that is going to change. I guarantee you, as I mentioned, in a few years, that will be completely different from what it is at today, what is considered safe, as quantum computing continues to advance and advance really quickly. And one of the other things that is going to be really important is to be able to pass audits. So we hear all the time from customers when there are failed audits. Those are expensive, those are time consuming, and those are difficult for organizations to deal with when something like that happens. Like you had said, Admir, if there's M&A events, if there's outside regulators, if there's any sort of oversight whatsoever on your organization, those audits can be really painful. And so we do a lot to make sure that we have audit logs and compliance reporting, so you can report exactly who has access to what and all the different activities that have taken place, so that you can pass those audits really easily. What, in terms of securing assets from the ICT risk assessment, have you done any risk assessments with customers, Admir, or sort of seen any findings from customers about these risk assessments and dealing with them?
Yes, we do. We do help. Strictly from our perspective, of course, in the end of the day, it's a customer responsibility to understand. We can help them map what are, from the applied cryptography perspective, what are the risks and how we best can manage and mitigate any potential problems. I'd say you nailed it on the previous slide, and on this slide, without automation, we are increasing the risks significantly. When it comes to the robust encryption, as we are saying here, and as you pointed out, towards the emerging post-quantum standards, I would say our our customers that are in this sector are also afraid and aware of an situation that is called harvest now, the crypt layer, that has to do with the future anticipated emergence of cryptographically viable quantum computers. What would that mean in future is that documents that you and I have exchanged perfectly secure today could have been eavesdropped in an encrypted form, but then with the cryptographically viable quantum computer, they would have been decryptable. And that's, of course, headache for certain type of organizations in this sector, and therefore they are, I would say, on the forefront of testing and starting to implement already some of the quantum safe algorithms that would enable us against cryptographically viable quantum computer, which, give or take, will hit us, say, in about 10 years. But it could be, as you alluded to, even maybe earlier, if you look at the recent advances that Microsoft announced just a few days ago. When it comes to
Yeah.
the audits, I think that's another point that is really nicely brought here. Just to wrap it up, with every issuance of, say, a certificate, or actually any action that is conducted, you can have cryptographically secured audit, which the audit log, which then allows your auditors to go and look through all the events that have been associated with that particular certificate or with that particular administrator, if you like. So that is very important from the compliance perspective in a wider sense. Not only DORA, we can maybe consider, say, PCI DSS, such kind of situations as well.
Yeah, and you were talking a little bit about PQC testing and how do people do that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't let people know about something we built in Microsoft Azure called PQC Lab, which is basically exactly just that. It's a free instance of our EGJ BCA PKI platform that anybody can use. You don't have to be a customer. You don't have to pay anything for it to test these PQC certificates and get used to them. And I know a lot of people are doing that right now. One of the other things we wanted to cover was, creating and maintaining a register for all certificates and certificate storing devices. And this is something that is extremely common when we go into larger organizations or organizations that have done mergers and acquisitions in the past, or even just organizations that are large, over 1,000 employees. They have, turnover and they've been growing quickly or what have you. And we discover a lot of certificates that they didn't realize were under their management, on their network, their servers, any endpoints. We look for workloads. We look at all your connected CAs in real time for certificates and your key and certificate stores. And so we make sure that we have an up-to-date registry that is one centralized place for people to have all that information. And when anything new happens, we mentioned earlier, you can actually set up notifications. So let's say you want to get it notified whenever there's a new certificate, you can get that set up or create a report on that and see exactly what volume you have. And this is something that not only surprises customers when we first set it up, but then it's really beneficial in the long term, right? To just understand what you have, how is it changing over time, how much has it increased or decreased, to have one centralized place. And one of the big things that differentiates Keyfactor is we are completely CA agnostic. So we're not a public CA. And we'll talk a little bit more about the importance of having a variety of CAs, because CAs can change. They can get distrusted. There can be revocations. There could be other PKI events. And part of what DORA really does is says, have a backup and then a backup to the backup. And that's exactly what having a diverse set of CAs does, is it creates a situation where you're not beholden to one CA, where you wouldn't have to, swap out all your public certificates at once if something were to happen. And we've seen that happen with customers, and customers come to us in a panic that did not have a tool in place where they could swap out CAs, and they have to kind of redo everything, which interrupts their flow of business. So just to wrap everything up, we are about doing digital trust right. We are a partner in this journey. This is a very complex journey for a lot of organizations. We know that these things take time, and setting it up correctly takes expertise. In our business alone, the two co-founders of the company PrimeKey that developed EJBCA open source PKI and Keyfactor Command, Ted Shorter and Tomas Gustafsson, they have over 50 years of experience in PKI. And that's something that I think a lot of customers appreciate, is that we have a depth of expertise in the PKI field that a lot of other organizations do not have. And we control it end to end. So everything from our Bouncy Castle cryptographic library, which is used in Android, to our EJBCA PKI platform, which is a CA, private CA, to what we do with certificate lifecycle management, is owned and developed by us. So we don't outsource it. And the big thing that we do, that especially customers that have manufacturing or want some sort of on-premise, is we do things like a hardware appliance for EJBCA, so that you can have on-premise, you can have cloud services, you can have a mix of them, really kind of deploy however is best for your environment. And you're not beholden to being in the cloud or being with a certain provider. You can really be flexible with how you deploy and reduce that risk. And the other thing that I think really people appreciate is that in terms of integrations, Keyfactor is a really large company at this point. We have well over 2,000 customers. We have hundreds of really large enterprises worldwide that use us. We have a rich library of integrations to tie into your ecosystem. I think we're at over 160 at this point and growing. We have a dedicated integrations team that does that, so that you don't have to worry about not having support for a specific vendor or your networking equipment or one of your key stores or what have you. We work with all the biggest names and a lot of the smaller names as well. Admir, what do you see with why people choose Keyfactor, or why they come to us for things like DORA?
I would say that's because applied cryptography is our bread and butter. We go deeper, we don't go wider in terms of adding different type of adjacent technologies. That might be an interesting discussion for the board of directors. But the point is, in what we do, we always set up to do in-house, to have thorough development processes, and that's kind of proven by our customers and the Keyfactor success. But we don't take that success for granted. We mentioned, for instance, post-quantum cryptography, Michael. Well, we've been dealing with that for, say, 8+ years now.
Yeah.
In preparations, we know that the day will come, and we want to make sure that our technologies are developed properly, that we can provide for, computational capabilities and any other aspect that the new technology may bring it there. And then, as you have pointed out, which I'm tremendously proud of our engineering team, is capability to deploy in a variety of deployment modalities and then even combine them. And why is that really great? That's because we don't make our customers change their business to fit us. We have understood that we need to make sure that we can secure them from our perspective the best way that suits their business needs. And that, I think, kind of reflects in the success of Keyfactor.
Yeah, I think you're right. We meet customers where they're at.
Yeah.
And we had mentioned some of the solutions, and this is our library. Bouncy Castle, as we mentioned with post quantum cryptography, we're developing the algorithms based off the standards, and we're constantly updating them with Bouncy Castle, which is really kind of the underlying tool that our other products use, EJBCA to generate the certificates, and then Command to discover, manage, and inventory and automate them. And then we also have secure software and code signing, as well as document signing, and a lot of other different signing solutions in there. So, like we mentioned earlier, this is all our technology. We own all of this as a company. We develop it end to end. And this is not a situation where Admir talked about post quantum cryptography, for instance, where we have to rely on another vendor and wait. We get to build it ourselves and then deploy it out throughout from Bouncing Castle to all these other products. So, let's say you want to get DORA ready and understand this. DORA is a complicated regulation, and we are not a one-stop shop for all of DORA. But if you're looking for things in terms of PKI, certificate lifecycle management, and some of the specifics that we just spoke of today, we can absolutely work with you to figure out a solution that fits your business, your needs, how you want to deploy, and do it in a way that is effective. Because we have been doing this type of rollout for other customers and working with other customers on DORA. Uh, I know it's in the tens at least, and probably in the hundreds as our teams get ready to develop this. And the nice thing is, people that are customers that are mature don't really have to go through much of a process because they can check all those boxes really easily if they've been using our tool and set up through us. We also have a solution brief that you can read that goes into a little bit more detail about some of the specifics in terms of PKI and CLM and the regulation. So we'd encourage you to have a read. So please reach out to us if you need help, and we're happy to partner with you and bring your PKI and CLM up to DORA's standards. Admir, any last thoughts?
No, I think you wrapped it up nicely. DORA is a process. It has started this year. So if you have not started worrying about it, please do, and we will be more than happy to help you.
All right. Thanks, everybody, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.